Q, podcast is over. Course is over. Everything's over. I need your unfiltered, candid advice on what is this course missing? It's 8 weeks. It's asynchronous. We have limitations, but what is this course missing?
I mean, from an aspect of collaboration, like being able to work a little bit more with peers and for peers to actually talk more about the criticisms and the things that they could do better or things that they did really well. I think that would really help, as well as having more time with you to speak about a lot of the background information, just like this podcast was, like being able to kind of sit there and be like, well, this is why I did this. And then you could kind of say okay, well, this is a really good example of this. And having that sort of collaboration with your instructor and your peers, I mean, that in essence that's like being able to improve in real time.
So this is a great reason other people should raise their hand and show up at, our random office hours and our scheduled office hours, but also for the end of semester podcast, because we get to have fun talking about the work, right?
Absolutely. It's really great. And it's going to give you some confidence in the stuff that you're making for this class, and not just for this class, but also going forward.
And hopefully it's super fun too, just to get to talk to people online in this laid back, no stress, no grade kind of fashion.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Quentin, our Q, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hi, so I'm Quentin Hinojosa. I am a photographer and just starting to get into design actually, but mostly a photographer. I'm here in Austin, Texas, but this class that I had taken with AI and branding was the last class of my senior year before graduation here next Sunday. And so it was really an enjoyable experience, and I'm really glad you have me on today.
And we're grateful to have you. And it's especially fun to have someone who has already been through the whole course. They already have their grade for the course. They're already graduating. They can tell us the unvarnished truth about what was working, maybe what wasn't working, and what to watch out for as people complete this course. And I know that people usually start this course with that idea of, wow, this is a lot. So what advice would you have for that day one, day two person who is watching this video thinking, AI and personal branding, what have I gotten myself into? This looks like a lot of work.
So I think you look at the canvas and you look at the assignments and you're bombarded with a lot of information. I will say, from the very beginning, that first week, I kind of had that exact same feeling. However, as you're going through the modules and you're kind of seeing how the work's pace is, a lot of it is very fleshed out to be using AI. The whole point of AI, and I think a big concept, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole point of this class is to sort of figure out ways to make your life a little bit easier by ethically using AI and being able to kind of streamline your ideas and complete work that's happening in real world situations. Whether you go into design or branding or what have you, you're still going to be using a lot of AI to kind of streamline your stuff. And so keeping that in the back of your head, knowing that you have a tool to call upon to kind of make some of that work a little less overbearing, and you can focus mainly on the creative side of it, I think that's going to relieve a lot of students, knowing that they do have outlets that could help them and not feel like they're doing everything on their own, all the editing and stuff like that.
Exactly. And the people who can leverage AI will be better positioned to do the work when they graduate. And that's part of the purpose of this course, whether you're headed towards client work, as you are, or employee work, as you might also be. It's one of those things where you'll be more prepared. And you specifically chose client work for this class. Can you speak a little bit about your persona and who your ideal target audience was for your client work?
I'm in a fortunate position because I already have experience and a working website and a brand that I've already kind of cultivated to a certain extent. So, I've already been paid for photography and I've been in this kind of creative sector. And so thinking about the client perspective is, want people to want your work specifically. And when you brand for that, there are going to be tastes that do not really work for other people. My specific offerings are very film heavy, and that is a very specific look. And if you don't want that, if you don't want to have that for your engagement photos or wedding photos or whatever, it's not going to be for you. So I think having a very client forward mentality is especially like you brought it up, like your audience is that's the cream of the crop. Like you have to sort of hone in and zone into that very specific audience that you're looking for. You don't really have a lot of like feelers out there, because if you can't cultivate a very specific brand, then no one's going to really know that your work is cohesive. And I think that's a really big part of especially this course, but also just in my work in general, is that if you can't create something cohesive and specific, then you're just another person on Instagram. You're another website that people are going to go through. And then no longer is someone looking at what you're offering. Now they're looking at the price. Is it worth the development of film? Most people are going to be like, no, I'm not paying an extra $50 for something that I could get done digitally with someone else. So I think that is sort of the teeter-totter that you have to walk.
And when you were crafting your persona, you already had this in mind because you had already worked with people, you had worked with clients. How did you further refine your persona based on that real life experience that a lot of people are doing survey research and interview research to do at this point in the course?
Well, looking at the assignments, and it's sort of like I'm applying what I've already cultivated to the class. And like I said, I think that is a very specific situation to be in. And it was a very fortunate position to be in. But in order to cultivate a very specific persona, I kind of stepped away from the class. And I was like, okay, well, what's going to actually help me with my own real world business? You take away the idea of trying to get a good grade, and you have to hit all the rubric metrics and you have to make sure that you do well in the class. But at the same time, this is something that I have been working on for a while. And so it's another thing to just kind of like throw something in and just hope that it gets a good grade, and then you're not really doing any service to your actual website or doing service for yourself. So I think stepping away and looking more about what I'm about and what I can provide, whether that be creatively or through my own experiences with clients and with branding, I think that helped me. So essentially all that, looking introspectively, figuring out what I actually want to do with my own brand is what created the success in the class.
And that's so perfect because the course and the criteria is for any personal brand. It's not for a photographer based in Austin, Texas, working in film style. Let's see your work. Can you show us your work, the website specifically? Because that's assignment 2 is the website. And I'd be curious to know what you did on your own and what maybe inspired you from the course and inspired you from real life to create the work you create.
This is loaded up on the main page and very simple. I think, so this has gone through a couple of refinements. My partner, she's a UX designer and product designer herself. And so
unfair advantage.
Yeah, I know. I'm very, very fortunate to have that situation, because going in, I had a completely different color scheme than you're looking now, and a different layout. And she came in, she was like, I don't like some of this, there's some accessibility stuff here and there. She's got all this training and background to sort of help me refine. So that's one thing that I can tell a lot of people that are building websites or going through this class or whatever. Make sure that you really pay attention to your peer reviews, and if anybody that is in an industry that can kind of give you pointers and tell you like, hey, like this is something that will help you in your design, listen to them, right? This right here is my first page. If you look through, these are my favorite photos. So of course you're going to put your favorite things. A lot of my recent clients that I've worked with are portraits and engagement photos. That's not what I particularly love doing. I like traveling and I like doing landscape and travel photography, if you can't tell from here. So I've got some pictures here from, Enchanted Rock and a Joshua Tree in Ireland and Los Angeles and Italy. And so it's kind of like, it shows that I do travel and I go around a lot. And then if you go up here to this tab, I have my color work.
I wanted to point something else out. So your work is travel centric. You love to travel, but you also have that sense of place right there in your headline, based out of Austin, Texas. So you're looking at not all these exotic locales for work. You're looking at people who are based in Austin. Is that correct?
I mean, depending on how much the project is and if it's worth it, I'll definitely travel for work. The main thing that you want people to know is you want people to know where you are. And it, like you said, it's like, I've got all these pictures from all these different places, but I'm in Austin. So the people that I am looking for client wise are most likely going to be in Austin. And so I think that, it's a good thing to point out. It's a very simple, just like, hey, I'm in Austin, look at my work. And I think that's kind of been my brand, is to not, it's more like show, not tell.
I feel like the brand of Austin complements what you're doing, though, because Austin as a city has done a wonderful job in branding itself as a city for creatives. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I lived in San Antonio all of my life until about 4 or 5 years ago, and love San Antonio, but there's more creative opportunity here in Austin. Not so much more that like you can't find it in San Antonio. You've got
They're
like,
building, aren't they? They have gotten so much better just in the last 10 years. with
absolutely,
opportunities.
Southtown and like the Brick and Blue Star area. Like you go around there, like you can find some really, really cool spots that are doing some great art. But yeah, I mean, there's a certain vibe in Austin that I think meshed really well with my personality, and I think a lot of people are looking for that specific kind of vibe in this city, as opposed to, I think I would have a lot less work in San Antonio, just given the ideologies.
Talent gets hired, and
That's
how well you are able to position that talent makes the difference, I think.
Yeah.
But show us your blog, since that was one of our first assignments.
This was actually something really exciting because I have never really done blogging. So as I said before, like I'm just like hey, like I'm a photographer, here's my pictures kind of thing. And so being able to write about some of this was actually very cathartic, and that was fun. So this right here, this is the blog, and I'm planning on continuing on writing some more as well. But this one's called Come to Jesus, but what do you want to be when you grow up? So when I was looking through a lot of just stuff for inspiration and trying to figure out what I was going to write about, I found an old video of me when I was like 3 years old or 4 years old. And that's what I quote here. My mom asked me in the video, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I say an astronaut, a doctor, and a bug scientist. And so didn't end up any of those, but it was just kind of like, okay, like looking at that and then looking back at, some of the decisions I've made, looking at what this assignment was asking for, and then also wrapping all of that up into how I've kind of become a creative and photographer. It was just like a really nice, easy flowing sort of sit down and write. And so this right here is a blog. I really enjoyed writing it. I really did.
And you speak in this story about your love of 35 millimeter. Speak to that.
35 millimeter is kind of like that's your bread and butter if you're starting into film. I mean, if you're lucky enough to have 120, then good for you. But 35 millimeters where most of us usually start out, and I haven't really cared to venture out into anything else. I started shooting 35 millimeter film when I was in high school. So there's a program in San Antonio called SACE, and my uncle was actually one of the co-founders of it, or president, or something like that. I'm pretty sure he helped create it, but I had automatic admittance into SACE just because of nepotism. And so from there, I never shot a film camera before. And there was really 2 routes you could go. You could do visual or you could do digital art. And they had a dark room there. And so I kind of was like, okay, well, I'm going to go the digital art route, but I do want to see what this film stuff is about. And so I went around, and my mom had an old Minolta camera from the 1980s when she used to take photography classes. And so I grabbed that. I grabbed some Kodak film, and I just went around shooting, not knowing anything about ISO or aperture or anything like that. It just kind of was like, all right, let's see what happens. And, it's pretty cool, stumbling upon something that ends up being, one of the most, interesting things that you could find in life, which is 35 millimeter for me.
And that influences your work. Can you show us your work?
I got my work tab. It's got a little drop down. So I'm going to go to my color film now. I don't have everything uploaded on here. I'm still kind of doing an audit. I'm going to start kind of changing it for the specific reason of branding, is trying to get a little bit more portraits in there and trying to get work that is reflecting the work that I want to get paid for. So this year is going to be just a lot of my photos that I've taken just around the world. You've got England, you've got Italy, you've got Ireland, you've got This is in Flagstaff. This is Los Angeles, the Grand Canyons, Joshua Tree. This is another Ireland picture. And so that's my color work. I've got a lot more. I've got some that I'm actually about to put on the site and put on Instagram from Marfa from a recent trip that I went there. If you notice, I like taking pictures in other places. I actually don't have a ton of Austin pictures, funny enough.
Sounds like a good goal for after graduation.
Absolutely. I have some, actually have some film right here ready to go. I got some Cinestill 800 and this nice, looks like 125 red scale film. That's going to be fun.
Where are you going to head in Austin, Zilker?
So, I mean, I've done a lot of Zilker, and I think of all the places I've shot in Austin, it's mainly been like the touristy areas like Zilker and like Auditorium Shores. I kind of want to go. I think it would be really cool to get some East Side Austin.
There's so much there now that used not to be. It's just blown up with amazing places to eat.
Absolutely. East Side. I live in North Austin now, but I used to live in North Loop, right near the Hyde Park area. And that is one of the very few old Austin places that still kind of has a lot of the businesses and staple landmarks. Once you kind of go below, like once you hit campus and go below that, or just around there, like the 30th to 45th Street, a lot of that stuff is kind of being bought out. A lot of apartment complexes are going up. A lot of, businesses are taking some office space there. And so it's cool to see all of those existing businesses. And so I think it would be cool to do a series of film photos of like Austin before it kind of continues to roll into the new Austin. I mean, I'm technically a transplant. That's what my girlfriend tells me, because she's from Austin. But so I'm part of the problem. But I at least I can take pictures and preserve some sort of old Austin work. But this right here is my black and white stuff. I got way more stuff. I took a lot of images down and because I just didn't like the way it looked. And I thought that it wasn't that thing that we were talking about earlier, the cohesiveness. It just wasn't cohesive. And so I'm kind of going back through. I do have purchasable prints as well. And so you can have my art in your house.
What's the range of price for our audience? Tell us.
So it really is. It depends on the size and like what you want to do. So I actually work with Printique, and they're great. So all you do is you upload your images to their website with the profile, and they take a percentage, but they do all of the printing and like the shipping. PRINT print IQUE Printique. And so this right here, and it's cool because you can also embed it into your website. So if you wanted to go and like, let's say you wanted the Ode to Sid Still is one of my favorite photos, you could go through here and it shows you a little bit of description. You can see like where it was on the Italian coast. And then you can choose a product, you can choose a print, and you can choose a side. You want a 16 by 20. And it kind of shows you just like a little bit of like, okay, that's going to be how it looks there. And then you can add it to your cart and then you can send it. So 16 by 20 print on some nice art paper is going to run you 92, but the 8 by 10s are 31. And so that helps me sort of get my overhead back from film. And obviously it's taking out a pretty significant percentage for it being such a seamless process.
As an entrepreneur, it's worth it to you to pay that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime that you can streamline something and it doesn't really affect your wallet too much or your overhead, like I'd honestly rather break even and have my stuff out there than to have a crazy margin and never have anything.
And there's also something to be said about valuing and value-based pricing or what you're actually selling. And I think that speaks to the About story too. Can you show us your About page?
This About page has gone through a million different edits as well. I think I'll probably do like a million more before I'm happy with it. But I do have a certain brand that I'm going for. The image that I chose is specifically meant to kind of take away from some of the, I think, pretentiousness that you can kind of like get from a film photographer. And so that was definitely a deliberate choice, as well as the idea of calling me Q instead of Quentin. I think that having a friendly, sort of more approachable look mixed with like kind of like juxtaposed with film photography is fun, because I think people can kind of take themselves a little too seriously in the film world, and I respect them. I love people that are really like mad scientists when they try to come with their work and they're doing all these crazy things. But you get light settings and you're pointing and you're shooting. I think that once you learn some rule of thirds and figure out what you want to compose, it's not as crazy as people think. I think anybody could learn how to be a very good photographer fairly quickly.
And your secrets include authenticity, being more approachable, not being quite as stuffy and formal. What are some other words that you use to describe your brand for those who you might want to work with?
I would say outside of authenticity and all that, I think natural, just something I want to mimic people's real life experiences. I think relatable. You go to a place, you're in a very beautiful city, you're in Italy, and you're all this place, and you want a piece of that to go home with you. Everybody wants to have like the perfect, pictures and memories of an event that they were in. And I kind of want to do that for people. I want them to have that natural sort of, okay, I was in this beautiful place. I got this really nice picture. I'm not sitting here trying to take a million other pictures. Now I can kind of enjoy it. And so, yeah, I think relatable is the main name of the game.
Can you show us your Instagram? It's not part of the course, but it is a part of your brand, an important part of your brand, because you're doing visual work. Can you click on that Instagram link and share that with us?
I've got a wonderful girlfriend there. Same branding. I mean, like, consistency is really important when it comes to branding, I think, especially if you're going to be a photographer or somebody. Like, you want people to recognize your profile image and also just like the overall like vibe of what you got.
And you have personal pictures, not just your work.
Absolutely. And my personal pictures are in film. Of course, you got to stay consistent with it. And so here you've got a lot of images that I've taken. So this is actually some digital stuff that I dipped into for a while. And then I actually stepped away from the white background. I kind of was like, I don't really like that anymore. I tried to make it look as though like you were putting like a frame up in your house. And so I messed around. I really liked these though, these fun little divider situations here. I thought these were really, really cool. But recently I've been focusing, like you said, on a lot of just like being very personable, because the people that I want to attract are the people that want engagement photos or people who want portrait photos, something that is a little bit different than the norm. This is actually somebody that I met. I got a tattoo in Brooklyn last year on kind of a whim. I've been following this guy for like 2 years, and I texted him because he had his phone number on his bio. I was like, hey, I want to get a tattoo in like 3 days. I'm flying out to Brooklyn. He's like, all right, cool. And he was like, what do you want? And I was like, just do whatever you want. He was like, okay, cool. So he was really excited about that. But it's cool. It gave me an opportunity to sort of show the way that you can highlight somebody. You can find out kind of what their personality is, and you can create something that they're going to love and also is a very good representation of your. I'm actually really, really happy with a lot of these photos that came out. But yeah, I think when it comes to my Instagram, it's a lot more personal. I think it's less transactional, and it's a nice way for people to see that I'm just a person. I'm also living life, and I have my friends and experiences that I can call upon and still create, even, with those personal subjects.
And for our listening audience, the handle is
JQH Film.
JQH Film Instagram. Fantastic. So that's the audience persona, the website. Let's move into the podcast. Can you share a little bit about how you approached the trailer script and the 3 to 5 minute narrative video podcast? So as an artist moving from a visual domain to a audio domain, did you have some challenges with that?
No. So I'm actually a former musician full time. So yeah. So
our listeners are like, this is unfair. This is unfair. He already had experience, and here I am coming to this news struggling without any experience with audio. Tell us about your experience as a musician and how it informed this activity.
When you first start getting into music, I mean, you're obsessed with the idea of creating, and then you're like, okay, well, how do I make that sound good? How do I apply it? How do I record this? And so I've been working with DAWs I worked with GarageBand when I was like maybe 12, 13 years old.
And for our listening audience, DAWs stands for Digital Audio Workstation. And GarageBand is a great example of that is an entry-level app.
Absolutely. If you're out there and you want to get into some music creation and you have no idea where to start, GarageBand is a fantastic starter. I use Logic, which is just the next step up, which is the service that Mac provides, the software that they use. I've also used Pro Tools. I've used Adobe. I've used Ableton. I've used a lot of different ones, but just for the purposes of having a Mac, Logic is what I found the best, just integrated with the technology I'm using. Starting out and playing music and trying to find a way for audio to sound good, you learn a lot about levels, you learn about decibels, you learn about plugins, you learn about compressors, you learn about all these things. Whenever I was thinking about the audio and stuff for this, I think the hardest thing for me was actually just trying to get the right narrative voice levels. It never really works a ton. I've done a podcasting class before, and so that was something that I did, but I was using my lapel mic for those. And so it was very different having because this microphone is a large condenser microphone. For people who don't know about large condenser microphones, they're mainly used for vocal performance, but having to figure out, okay, what levels do I need for that? Because I don't need any fancy reverb or echoes or anything. It needs to actually be very crisp. And so that, I would say, was a challenge, is taking all the knowledge and honestly, like getting rid of some of the things that I was used to doing. And so, and boiling it down to something more basic.
What did you get rid of that you used to do?
So I tried a lot of different compressions and tactics and trying to limit some of the high ends that I had, because I feel like, a lot of times you want to have the timbre of like the lower voice whenever you're speaking. I think just from a rhetoric aspect, it works better. But the compressors just kept, trying to do it, it sounded so thin that I ended up just kind of omitting all of that and going back to just using like really basic plug-in like narrative vocals and then just EQing it. And working with it a little more manually, so I got the sound that I wanted. And even then, I feel like looking back at the videos, I'm like, I wish I did something a little bit different. But I not only did that with my large condenser microphone in my DAW, I took that and then I actually put it through Adobe AI to clean up even further.
And Adobe AI Voice Enhance is software that has made teaching podcasting so much easier than it has been in the past, because it's doing a lot of that heavy lifting for you. So you can start with a product that is closer to the studio level mic, even if you didn't have one, right?
Yeah, it's actually pretty amazing. I was doing the trailer and I was like, I could have just recorded this without any EQing, without any levels, and just threw it into AIs. For the students that are just getting into this class, or doing podcasting class, or any of the classes you're going to have later on at UTSA, it's kind of a cheat code.
Excellent. Can you share your trailer with us? How did that feel watching that? I know some people get a little uncomfortable watching themselves.
I've had to watch myself sing multiple times. It's still, I don't think it ever gets totally normal, but no, I'm proud of the product of it. And obviously I think as a perfectionist, you're kind of just like, I could have done different.
And you didn't have as many cuts though. You were speaking naturally to camera, which so many people really struggle with, that idea of speaking in their own voice naturally to a camera lens. Can you give advice on how you accomplish that? Because I know so many people struggle with it.
Yeah. I think performing most of my early 20s and like being on stage and like having some of that, I think is a huge advantage, because I'm already used to sort of having quote unquote eyes on me. But like if you're looking at a camera and you're just talking to it, like kind of how we're doing right now, and you take out the self-consciousness of like, I'm talking to myself right now, and you imagine that there is someone on the other end that you're talking to, I think that's huge. I think having that dialogue, knowing that you are speaking to an audience, takes away the weirdness of looking at a camera. Also, practice. I think the main thing that's going to cause you the most anxiety and is going to make it seem as though you're not speaking naturally is if you read your script twice and then just winged it, said whatever you're going to say to the camera while you're constantly like reading on a line. It's about the work being put in. So I think that's another big aspect of it.
And do you have other advice for podcasters who are starting out with their 3 to 5 minute narrative, for example?
When you're choosing your brand and you're choosing what you're going to be talking about and creating all of these assignments about, make sure it's something that you know. Make sure it's something that is something you actually care about and that you speak well about and you have knowledge about. Because if you're choosing something, you're just throwing a dart and just hoping that it's something that you can learn quickly, you're going to have a really hard time coming up with a concise 3 to 5 minute podcast about that subject. AI is not going to do that work for you. Your believability is going to come a lot with just being able to speak off the script or being able to vamp on it. When I was doing that negative space trailer, there are moments you can see where I'm looking kind of like to the side. I'm looking at the script and it's leading me through the trailer. However, at the end, what I'm talking about, have you ever seen something that you've looked at that you really like and you're like, why do I like this? That was completely improvised on that take. And I really liked it because I'm talking about something that I know and I care about. So I think if you're true to yourself and you're talking about something that you care about, I don't think 3 to 5 minutes is really going to cause you a ton of pain.
It is so important. That idea of authenticity comes from what you're actually passionate about. And if you pick something that you think, oh, this is really good for my market. I want to do this because I know I can make money doing this. This course and your personal branding activities will be exponentially more difficult if you don't have that core of what you are personally passionate about, what you like to talk about, and just riff on with your friends. We can tell in that video and in your 3 to 5 minute narrative as well that you really do love what you're doing. This is not a front. This is something that you've invested many years in practice and perfecting. And it's not something that you're going to not do tomorrow. You're going to keep doing this because it's something you actually love. And different elements of your personal brand will be chosen to focus on over the years to come, but the core of that identity will not change.
Absolutely.
So speaking of identity, the next assignment is the LinkedIn assignment. Can you show us your LinkedIn assignment and how you approach that very different from Instagram kind of platform? Because Instagram, I'm imagining you're very comfortable. And LinkedIn, were you as comfortable?
No, definitely not.
That's most people. Most people are like, LinkedIn, I have to do a LinkedIn for this class. I don't want to do LinkedIn. That's one of the reasons we have the assignment, is to get you out of your comfort zone.
So I had a LinkedIn before. It forced me to look at it and be like, okay, like what am I actually trying to say on here from a level of professional networking? So if you notice here, it's a different photo. I feel like the photo that I was using for my Instagram and for my website was a little too casual. You don't want to have like a diagonal photo. I actually want a better one. This is kind of like just what I had on film of me, like just me. I did want to stick to that same vibe. However, I'm using my government name, Joseph. So there's a different kind of feel when you're looking at LinkedIn, because it's not really a place for, I wouldn't say that you can't be creative, especially like given this assignment that we had for our post.
Show us the pictures there that you chose to share on LinkedIn for your post.
This photo, I've been shooting film off and on since I was in high school. It wasn't until I would say 4 years ago that I was like, maybe I should get back into it on a heavy level and just like take a film camera everywhere I go. So I took a trip. This is a trip to Joshua Tree. This is probably the single photo that got me to where I am now. As when it comes to composition, when it comes to being interested in photography as a business or as a brand, I took this photo, developed it when I got home, and I was like, I might be good at this. I might be kind of good at this. Because I really love the composition of this photo. This is kind of a good reason to put this here, right? It's like if someone were to ask me about it on my post, that I'd be able to say like, this is my favorite photo. This here's a photo.
Hold on. So this was the photo that created Q the photographer. Before this moment, you liked photography. You were into photography. But this is the photo that sets you off to know that this is what you wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is it. I kind of just threw the camera in the bag and went around and took photos on a trip. And then I got back, and I'm not really a huge fan of winging it when it comes to like art. Like I've been very like meticulous about music and like wanting to know theory and all these things. However, I never thought I was going to be doing photography as like as a business. It wasn't, I looked at this and I was like, I didn't even like research anything. Eventually I did get better about like light settings and stuff like that. And that's helped me tremendously. So I would say half of this was luck and half of it was having just an eye for design. But this is it. This is the photo. This is kind of what started everything.
Excellent. Show us more.
So this right here is photo started everything. I've got this one here this is when I went to go to Brooklyn. This is actually really cool because the beautiful thing about film, you can't predict how things are going to develop. I took 2 photos. You can see 2 photos here. You got the same guy here looking that way and looking straight. So what happened was most likely is that when they developed the film, kind of overlapped or was spooled incorrectly, or maybe I didn't actually pull the film trigger as far as I should have, and it kind of like exposed double photos on the same thing. But I love it. It's like Bob Ross says, it's a happy accident.
This was one of the things that was mourned the most when we switched to digital. I learned in a dark room at my university, in a dark room, how to develop film. And the mourning period was a very long period because of exactly what you're describing here. Bob Ross's happy accident.
Absolutely. So many things can happen in the film development process that can create really cool pictures and pieces of art. And so I'm really happy and mad about the fact that film is coming back, because it's kind of like vinyl. I started collecting vinyl when I was like 10, and I remember going to Half Price Books. I got Led Zeppelin 4 for like $2 at Half Price Books. No, Led Zeppelin 4 at Half Price Books would be like $35 now, which is crazy. But I'm happy about it. A lot of film is being produced now,
and it's interesting too. I've heard that younger generations specifically have embraced the physical media more than their older counterparts. And this is something that you're absolutely in love with. So you're able to play to that new generation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think physical media it's always been, I think, the best sort of tangible thing when it comes to, even when you're a kid and you're in like cassette tapes and CD-ROMs. I don't know how young people are that are watching this, but when I was a kid, I remember listening to CDs on the CD player before all the iPods and stuff came out. And it wasn't until, I was like 10, 11 years old that I was like, well, these CDs are cool, but like there's these really big ones that you play on like a turntable. And so I started getting into vinyl. But it's cool because you can actually, I think the experience is different. Same with film photography. I think you're forced to understand something, whether that be listening to an entire side of an album to get to your song. Unless you want to kind of be nitpicky, you usually listen to the whole album, which I think is kind of lost with Spotify playlists. And also when you look at film photography, you're forced to not see the product until you get that role developed. And so you kind of have to know what you're doing. You have to choose the shots that you take. You can't just be sitting there and just, clicking all over the place like you would with digital. So I think there's a certain appreciation that comes with physical media. And I think a lot of people are starting to rotate back into that because of the immediacy of just the current societal norms of streaming services and what have you.
And this is referential because it's referencing your persona and understanding that persona of someone who appreciates this kind of work as being your people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not everyone's going to agree with me, right? Like, and not everybody's my audience. So that's very poignant. It's like some people are this hipster guy, vinyls and film photography. I'm relatively typecasted, I feel like. So, but I do it to myself. We've got some more images here. So this is actually one of my clients here that hired me on for engagement photos. This is a photo that was taken on film, but this was their favorite photo of all of them. And so just kind of like showing that it's applicable to not just travel photography. I can show that I can do other things.
Probably, can we go back real quick to the wedding one? I probably didn't say this in the feedback, but I want to say it now, Q. I want to say it now. This is a standalone post because you have the picture and you have the story. So unlike in Instagram where we have like a reel kind of thing, this, I think, would be a great LinkedIn post to talk about the work and highlight the work and the behind the scenes. Like, what did it really take to get a picture like this? What were the nerves like on that day, and making sure that you're preserving the thing that they're going to look back for the rest of their lives at? Like, there's some emotional resonance there, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I definitely appreciate about the course is it got me into the LinkedIn, being a little bit more meticulous about the LinkedIn world. And so, yeah, without that suggestion, I would have never known. Look out for that. This is another photo here that I really love. This was taken in Flagstaff. This is an old theater out there. Same thing with the Joshua Tree photo. This was part of the same trip on two different rolls. I remember looking at this and being like, that framing is good. The light settings are good. Just kind of being there like, I think I retained something as a 13-year-old at an art program. I think I didn't forget everything that I learned. So that was really fun. And then this one here, it's the last image. So this image, this could be another post if thinking about it now. So this guy, this is in Sedona, Arizona. He was selling quartz rocks at the bottom of Cathedral Rock, which is one of the most famous hikes that you can do out there. And I talked to him for about, I want to say, I don't know, maybe like an hour about stuff, just about his story and his life. I tend to do that. I love talking to people with interesting stories. And so his name was Infinity. And I was like, hey, can I like take a picture of you? He's like, yeah, sure. Cool. I bought a quartz rock from him. And, I haven't seen him since, or I don't think he had any contact. He didn't have like a business card or anything, but that's one of those things that you can kind of call back on and be like, that was a really cool moment. And the only reason why I had that moment was because I saw a composition and I wanted the backstory of somebody's life. And it's always good, I think, if you're creating something to sit there and sort of appreciate your subject, whether that be a person, a building or a statue or what have you.
This is photojournalism. This is telling stories like you would with a photojournalism kind of essay, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a good way to kind of see, to describe the way that I see my work. I think a lot of times my main goal is to capture something that represents more than the image and something that I can write about, which goes back to the idea of the blog post and how that kind of ignited something. So I think as I go forward and I'm looking at all these things that I can sort of call back upon and the stories that are behind them, I think having that context just builds even more trust in people that are looking for your services.
No work happens in a vacuum. There's always connections and context that can help to enrich the understanding for your ideal target audience. Share with us your lead magnet and your social media calendar now that we've talked about LinkedIn.
So, I think it's important to always have things accessible. So if you are working on stuff, a tip here, don't make anything hard to find, right? So it's right next to my working main page. And so you just go here, you go to the lead magnet. It was way more than I would have actually created.
Yeah. And the purpose of the lead magnet, just for context for our audience, the whole reason for this is so that you can collect the email address. You can form that deeper relationship off the social platform in your own space instead of your rented space. So this space guide that you've created is the vehicle to go deeper with that audience, kind of like we're doing now with this podcast. Kind of like we're doing right now with people listening might be thinking, hey, I like Q's work. I dig Q. I think I'm going to go check out his website. And this deepens the relationship in a similar way with your negative space guide. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So I had there was there was certain routes that I was looking for and a lot of lead magnet, research using the rubric that you'd given us and also just kind of like researching lead magnets on my own. I thought it would be really cool to create a mock of like a guide that you would get from a photographer, right? So like my whole thing is that I love 35 millimeter and this is my website and this is my work and you can hire me for things, you can buy my prints, what have you. However, what if you're curious about 35 millimeter? What if you look at these images and you go like, well, I want to try that. I like the way that looks. Why don't I give that a shot? And so I thought it'd be really cool to, obviously I am going to have to really dig deep and on it and figure out what knowledge I want to put in this guide. I actually still have it kind of like working. But for all intents and purposes, imagine you get this guide, right? And it's just this guy who takes photos and he's from Austin, Texas. And he's telling you how to, how to get into 35 millimeter film from a standpoint of, what are light settings? What is ISO? What is aperture? What is the rule of thirds? What can I do to optimize the way that I'm taking photos? Because film, as said before, it's on the rise. It's not cheap. It's a very expensive hobby. And it's not something that a lot of people want to dive into head first, because that trial and error can cost you, if you're buying a roll of film for $12 to $15 and it's taking you $15 to $20 to develop that film and you get 36 images on that roll, that's $1 a picture. And that's not mentioning the fact that I would say if you're lucky, 50% of those are usable. I would say out of every single roll, I could get 10 out of 35 images, 36 images. That's a good roll of film. I'm also very picky. I think before doing that, you should probably know a little something. Oh, you can kind of come in here, you can type in your email address, and you can get the guide. And so that was my concept with the lead map. If you go on the website, you can download it. It's a pretty short and sweet guide, but it's going to give you enough knowledge to go out there and take some photos.
And I'm thinking people who are digital photographers could get a lot from this too, because they could apply some of the post-production aspects of what you're doing in film, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the digital came, afterwards, right? The background of light settings and photography is all done on film. And so knowing how to shoot on film is actually probably going to get you to a place on digital that a lot of other digital photographers are not.
Excellent. So that's your lead magnet. Let's take a look at your media kit and how you approach that assignment.
Let's do it. So the media kit is something that I think I struggled with a little bit more than anything else, solely because I didn't really have a ton of metrics to go off of. And so that sort of stressed me out. However, when you're looking at the assignment, you're looking at your brand, I kind of was just like, okay, well, imagine like you have a ton of metrics to call upon. And so outside of that, it was just back to the old, this is me, this is my brand. What can I do to exemplify that?
And you had the Instagram account, which has metrics on the dashboard, right? So you had that, which was pre-established, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's like, you can kind of go, okay, well, I don't have like these specific things, but I can kind of like grab them here and there and you can pull them in. So to whoever's doing their media kit, don't worry, you've got metrics.
You've got metrics. You just got to find them. That's the key. And they can be small because we just started. It's an 8-week class. Of course, they're going to be small. No worries. But starting to collect and look at the data gives you feedback for where to go and what direction to go, right?
Absolutely. So here I was like, okay, this is different. It's not my work. It's not necessary. It's like, this is like something that I'm like presenting, I would say more business wise. I want it to all be in one place. I still wanted to have that creative aspect. So here you can see this is very readable. It's white on red. So there's no contrast problems here. You get a little bit funky here whenever you start hovering over these things, but I wanted this to kind of be, I wanted to showcase some of my work still. So if you go over, you can actually, the photo comes up. And so obviously a picture of Austin, and then you go over to my bio, that's a picture of me. You go to the pod and blog, that's a picture of the screenshot that I have from my blog.
What platform are you using again, Q?
So I'm using Squarespace.
So this is Squarespace, a platform that is money, but students are free to use if they want to pay for a site that they might want to use afterwards. A lot of our students are using Adobe Portfolio because the university pays for it, because we're at Adobe Creative Campus and it's free, but they are absolutely free to use something like Squarespace, especially if they want to continue after the course.
I have to state this again. I'm very fortunate to have the experience and all the things that I already had going and jumping into this course. But I do think that a lot of students can see some of the design aspects of my work and apply it to Adobe Portfolio. You do not have to use a basic template. You do not have to do things and just copy and paste. You can be very creative with design. And so, because if you go to Squarespace, they had templates too that you can plug and play. But that's no fun. I think design is definitely more fun when you actually try and figure out ways to show who you are. The images, I try to keep them somewhat, similar to what the act, and that's something to think about. Like, even as small of a detail as just choosing photos that can kind of mimic whatever you're trying to like show with the title. Demographics, I got a person there, right? Metrics, didn't really know what to do there. So I just kind of was like, here's a sunset. Socials. And the other thing too is I have color, black and white, color, black and white, color, black and white. Post for each example, testimonials, and sponsorship opportunities. And so when you drag off, you can see those things again. So you're not really worried too much about the context. But let's click into the brand here. Short, sweet, clean. I think that's the biggest thing. Having something that is very readable for an overview, I think was very, very important. It hits all the metrics of what the assignment asks for, but it doesn't overcrowd eye. I think that's a very big thing that less is more, I think, in my personal opinion.
And this is something that you retain after the course.
Absolutely. You see, and it's, you can see a lot of others' work. You can see your own work and you can kind of be like, okay, I kind of like what they did. I don't like what they did. I like what I did. I don't like what I did there. So you're kind of just like chipping away at kind of what your design should look like. Same thing here with the bio. Wanted it to be an image, not a ton of copy. I think that's a big thing for me, noticing through my own design and through others' designs and just kind of reading through stuff. A lot of copy is, I think it's very easy to do when you're using AI. When you're using AI, it's going to give you a ton of stuff. You need to go in there and you need to audit it and you need to make sure that you're only putting the relevant information, because people aren't going to read paragraphs and paragraphs of stuff that they could read one paragraph to understand.
So visual clarifiers, super important. The bolding, the bullet points, the editing that you're talking about, important for the entire website, the entire personal branding project. It's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. You want people to know. So if you see here, kind of just exactly what you said, we've got our titles here. We've got the things that are describing it. We have our bullet points because we don't want to be bombarding people with information that they really don't need to know inside of a paragraph. You can just to the chase, right? Cut to the chase there. And then you just do the same thing here with the blog and had a fun little, little rotating thing here. That's fun. Throw things into your design that you just want to do for fun, that you catches your eye. I think that's a really important thing, is that yes, you're in school. Yes, these are assignments, but you can still have fun. We look at our demographics here. Now, these infographics or these graphs here are embedded.
Adobe Portfolio does allow embedding. There's just a little bit more of a learning curve there, and you do have to have some things working in code in order for it to work when you embed it.
Yeah. So if you want to go the extra mile and do it. I mean, it's really fun being able to kind of see these little things hover up, and you can see it's very interactive. I think that's important to have.
So it looks like you had some success here. Those impression numbers are going up.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing with this. I've got more clicks, engagement, and I used some of the metrics from my music stuff as well to kind of see like what, because that's also part of my brand. Having these on here was very kind of weird for me. I was just like, oh man, I got to look at my metrics. But I think that kind of forces you to kind of see what your reach is. And I think that's important. Socials here, you got the links. You've got Instagram. You got this little accordion, this fun little accordion that has the information. And then I've got my little favorite photo here down at the bottom. A lot of the metrics, I will say, I like I said before, I think this was my struggle section, is that I it was really hard for me to integrate my brand and display my metrics. And so that was a really, I think, interesting realization going through and figuring out, and obviously like going through this media kit after this course, we're going to be changing things around. 300 plus followers. So, I mean, I didn't really have a ton of metrics to go.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about the engagement metrics that we could include here, right? Like, for example, how many of those followers percentage wise might have engaged with a post or looked at a post. And then on your creator dashboard, if you have a creator account, you can see those numbers of, oh, this post had this reach with this kind of audience. And there's a lot more detail there that you can pop out from Instagram. And not all platforms do that. So that's one of those advantages of you having a visual Instagram account, which I'm sure will shoot up after this episode, that you can look at that data and you can pull that in and say, here's the graph from Instagram alone. And LinkedIn, obviously, we just started that, but your Instagram, you had a presence already.
Absolutely. And that's a good point. I think just looking at, I didn't even think about going into the analytics and like figuring stuff out and adding that in.
And you might not need to for your goals now that you're graduating and the class is over, but it's something that could be done for our future students and could be done in the future if you wanted to highlight that.
Absolutely. So students out there, take this from me, right? You've got metrics. We've talked about it before. You've got more metrics. Find them, right? I mean, that's a good point of criticism of just like, hey, I could have probably gone in and done a little bit more analytic research.
If it makes sense for your personal branding goals. And if not, then you need to spend your time elsewhere. This is not the priority, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Here I've got my LinkedIn post metrics, fun little image and title there. And then I've got my little metrics here by company size and the seniority. That's the metrics that you get off of LinkedIn. And a fun little, you can click here and then it'll take you, that might have not popped up, but you can click and it'll actually take you to the post. And so I think that's also real important when you're doing your media kit, is make sure that something as small as including a link to the actual thing that you're talking about can be seen as very thought through and thorough. And it takes like a second to do something like that.
A second to appear more thoughtful.
Yep, absolutely. It's a little paradoxical, but I like it. So here we've got the testimonials. We've got some images here that show it. I think that's good for just the idea of being able to see what the people are saying and just like you have a face to it. It's not really just this type that's in the middle of like a page. And so I think that's good too. Just to have that familiarity. I think with my brand, that helps as well. As I stated before, I'm trying to be relatable. And so having people that recognize that, I think is, that's something that you want to include. You want people to see that.
And not everyone has the faces of the audience members who are their ideal target audience in their testimonial. So that's one of those kinds of touches that puts you apart from other portfolios.
Absolutely. Then we've got our sponsorship opportunities. This is actually something that I am going to go through and kind of figure out a little bit more. I think on this one, I was looking at some of the costs, and it's not really something that I'm going to necessarily provide. I think this section needs a revamp and is not going to be as, I think, vlog, and I'm probably not going to be doing any vlogs for people. Probably going to stay away from, this is the thing, I don't love being the one in front of the camera. And so being able to kind of take images and see other people and do videos of other people and photos of that, I think that's definitely where my strong suit is.
You're not alone. A lot of people share that, wanting to be behind the camera instead of in front of the camera. And remember, the whole reason that you're doing the personal branding is so that you can establish authority as the person in both places, not just behind, but also in front. So while you don't need to continue those things that don't serve you and your brand and what you authentically love doing, having a start there and having some ways to collaborate with other creators specifically is a great place to start, because you don't have to have all these sponsorships and brand stuff, and you probably won't without a huge following anyway. But you can collab and you can make it easy for people to collaborate with you, not just clients, but other creators, right?
Absolutely. I think that's the one thing that I haven't necessarily had the pleasure of doing quite yet is working with other people. I think having this experience being on the podcast, this is my first time.
You're doing it right
now. Yeah. This is my first time being on another person's platform, another person's podcast, and it's fun. I think outside of me not wanting to be in front of the camera, when it comes to my work, I've played music on stage before, and I do like the attention. And so, being able to use that and collaborate and dip more into the space of, this kind of media, the podcasting media, is something that definitely interests me. And being able to kind of show what I can do with my brand, it's just another aspect of being able to speak on it here to you and to your students and to whoever else is watching. That builds a certain confidence in your brand. And I think it definitely correlates to just having a look and a feel in the general sense.
Q, you've taken us from the first assignment to the last. You've given us an in-depth look at all of your work. What is your parting advice for people who are about to take this course?
So I'd say, one, don't stress out. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. It looks like a lot. It looks like a lot of work. Believe me, it is very manageable when you're using AI in an optimal sense. And also, if you're choosing something that you really enjoy and you care about, it comes very naturally. So that's the first thing. Don't stress out. You see all the modules, you see all the, the different videos that you've got to watch it. And it's not as much as you think. So that's the first one.
It has been curated. It's been curated. Just like Q is curating and taking photos out of his website, I too am taking things away from the course and making sure that we have just what we need for a good course experience. I had to add that since we talked about curating earlier.
Absolutely. The second one is a big one. Do some research of your own on design application and figuring out ways that you can increase the quality of your work outside of, the content that you're given in the class. I have said multiple times throughout the episode that I'm very fortunate to be someone who has experience with composition and design and all those aspects, but it's really not as difficult as you think to understand some of those basic principles, such as contrast and framing. And it's going to completely change the way that your stuff looks compared to your peers, and just on a level of you being happy with the product that you make. Very simple stuff like the rule of thirds, like leaving space, like not center aligning all of your text. Please stop center aligning your text. And that's going to help you out a lot. So just supplemental research, I would say, is a big thing. And the last one would be, don't be so nervous. Get on the camera, speak to it, practice your speeches for your trailer and your podcast. Be confident in the way that you're creating things. Don't just create a template that you're copying and pasting AI into. It's very obvious when that happens. Personal touch is extremely important, even when you are in a class that is utilizing AI. Just because you have the ability to use AI doesn't give you the pass to not have any effort whatsoever. So I would say that's the thing, is just give it a try. Film your stuff at eye level. Don't be looking down at your phone like it's a TikTok that you're talking about. Really focus on the things that you want to present as your own brand and let that lead you through the class.
AI can sterilize the personal branding, but if you put in all the things that you love, if you share all these things that you love, it can be a wonderful brainstorming partner to help level up some of these assignments where you're being asked to use AI. Other sources of wisdom that you recommend for our audience, places where you'd like to go for learning again and again, or maybe a book that you really enjoyed?
Absolutely. I would say if you're really trying to up your game when it comes to design and just like branding, I would definitely start looking into typeface, like books on typeface, books on design, books on trying to understand. I have like a specific one right now, but just throughout the years, like finding things that are specific about composition. I mentioned it before in one of my tips, but composition is everything and it's everywhere. It's the whole concept of the negative space trailer and podcast that I did for that assignment. You can walk outside and you could look at something and then you could immediately know what the best way to capture that image or moment is. And you can do that with websites. You can do that with, your blog posting and like where things should be. And it doesn't take a ton of work. So I would say that would be the big thing, is just look into typefaces, understand design, and understand composition.
And the reason we do that research is to understand our audience, which brings us full circle to the persona. Q, thank you so much for sharing your portfolio, your wisdom, your art, and your passions.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on, and you know, it was a great time. I'm glad that I could show my work, and hopefully it helps some students here in the future.
Excellent. I know it will. Thank you.